You're watching Switched on IT. I'm Barry. We are talking today again with Doug and Ray, and I think that they're probably there now. Are you with us, guys? Yes, they're there. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Barry.
And good evening, Ray.
Good morning, Barry.
Okay, now I believe this morning, or today rather, we are talking about QR codes, am I correct?
That's right.
That we are.
Okay, well this should be an interesting show. As you guys know, I use QR codes quite a bit. So Doug and Ray, please take it away for us.
Good day, thanks Barry, and good morning Ray. Hope you've got a pleasant evening over there in Washington.
I am. Good day.
Excellent. So what we're going to talk about today is QR codes, and let's start with the definition. You know, what does QR even stand for?
Yeah, so QR code stands for quick response, and that's their very nature, right? Is that they're supposed to be really easy for you to be able to scan and immediately get back a response. And so they come out of the early 90s. Japanese automakers were interested in having a way to communicate the status of automotive inventory at different stages along the process of building cars. And so they were developed there in Japan and quickly spread globally, and come to be the little black and white 2D barcodes that everybody knows today.
Right. Okay. So it's just an alternative to a barcode, in a sense.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to think of a 1D barcode, are just the lines, the lined barcodes that we see for UPC symbols and many other products around the world. We use 1D barcodes because they're very easy to transit small bits of data, right? A string of numbers and so on and so forth. But when we want to grow the information that we want to share, 1D barcode fails to do that because it can't send alphanumeric characters to a system. So that's where 2D barcodes, or quick response codes, QR codes, come into play. They can hold up to 4,296 characters, alphanumeric characters. They can actually hold more if it's only numbers, but 4296 is the number of characters, alphanumeric, that can be embedded in one QR code. So it can hold a really long string of data. And that's their benefit, is that with one little quick scan of a mobile application, you can then be directed to a long string of information very, very quickly.
Okay. When you say a long string of information, what sort of information? What a quick response, where the response is taking what kind of form? What are we normally seeing them being used for?
Mostly directed to a website address. So we call it a URL or URI, Uniform Resource Locator. So URL and or an indicator in the URI sense. And so we're basically directing someone to the web browser on their mobile device to trigger something. But it can open up mobile applications. It can trigger all kinds of things by virtue of embedding the right code for the right program.
Right. Okay. And so when people are, reading those codes, what are they actually reading the QR codes with?
Typically their mobile phone, so their smartphone. You can use really any device that has a camera, and some computer programs are capable of actually reading QR codes on screen. So instead of having to scan it, it's already present on the screen, and all you have to do is click the code, and it will direct you to where that QR code is going to go. It's being read on the screen in essence. So you have the ability of scanning with the device that has a camera associated with it, so the image, optical recognition can take place, or using software that can read the screen.
Right. So everybody just has to have a QR code reader on application on their smartphone or the tablet or whatever device they're using to they're going to use to scan a QR code. They just have to have a QR code reader application running to be able to achieve that.
The beauty of today is that if you're using Android or iOS, the two major operating systems for mobile devices around the world, both actually come embedded with a QR code reader in the camera app. So if you're using the native camera app to either of those platforms, most Android operating systems, there are many of them. There's a lot of segmentation of the Android operating system, but most of them that are modern, if you open up the camera app, there will be an option called Lens. And if you just click on the Lens option, you'll then be able to identify a QR code, and it will then show and display the terminating location. For Apple, just open up the camera app, hover over the QR code, and it will display where the terminating location is for that QR code as well. So it's built into all the mobile applications now. So that has reduced the bar. Once upon a time, you had to install an application and teach people a lot about how to, get access to that QR code. Today, that bar is much lower because it's built into the operating systems.
Right. So you don't, so you can just go to your camera. You don't need to actually open up a QR code reading app anymore.
Not anymore.
Just open up camera
unless
and choose the right setting.
Application, that requires you to use their QR code reader for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty easy for the user to now read a QR code. As you say, they've lowered the bar in that respect. Tell us a little bit about the actual process to create a QR code. If I wanted to create a QR code for whatever reason, beginning to end, what do I do, and how long does it take me to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start off with the reality for business owners, which is that QR codes are hideous little beasts. Not to mince words, but I think they're just ugly, and so it really behooves businesses beyond just my aesthetic position on it to make sure that QR codes stay on brand. So as you're creating QR codes for any particular reason, and we'll talk about this after the break, whatever the marketing or management reason for being able to use a QR code, you need to really make sure that you adapt the QR code for brand purposes to match at least one of your dominant brand colors. And in most cases, you can change a QR code to look good within a matter of minutes. You can open up a website, and all you need to do is to know the terminating location. And when I mean terminating location, I mean the URL you want to direct someone to, or the mobile application you want to send someone to. And you take that link, you go to the tool that you use. There's many websites out there that are called QR code generators. So just type QR code generator into Google, and it'll take you there. And you'll paste the code. It'll verify that it's created the QR code. You can then modify the look and feel of the QR code and then download it. And it will give you a downloaded image file, and it will have the QR code. Now, a QR code requires a number of different things to be valid, that is scannable by the most number of devices. So remember that as you're creating them, you can actually have a very high error correction rate. What that means is that up to 25 to 30% of a QR code can fail, and it will still be read and direct someone to that location. That's why we can actually change colors, and we can put images into QR codes or impress a QR code on a logo and things of that nature. And so it's actually corrupting the QR code, but not enough such that the appropriate pieces, the eye, as well as some of the fixed patterns on the QR code, are still capable of being read by an optical scanner and directing you to the termination location, so the terminal location. So you have a lot of capability there, and so that's one. Yeah, you want to really make sure that you are on brand with regard to the QR code, and you can actually soften the lines of a QR code. Typically, if you look at a QR code, it's black and white, it's squares and squares and white space, and then you can actually soften the edges so they're more rounded. It depends on your brand, but generally it's nicer and more appealing to the eye if you round the edges of your QR code. The other point I wanted to make is that contrast is really important. A QR code doesn't necessarily have to be on a white background, but it certainly needs to be contrasted with the background on which it sits, so that you're capable of having the scanner recognize the appropriate parts of the code to be able to direct it to its terminal location. So you need to make sure that if your QR code is a dark color, it's on a light background, and if it's a light color, then it'd be on a dark background, so that the camera on your mobile device or the camera on your customer's mobile device are able to read it effectively. So soup to nuts, 5 minutes to create, edit, and produce a QR code, and then it's off to the races for the various uses.
Okay, excellent. So it's really pretty simple, and anybody could do it. Well, then that means we need to talk about the use cases where people are using QR codes. And I know that there's marketing use cases, and there's also just straight operational use cases. And you started with the example of the Japanese automakers that were using them as a more sophisticated version of a barcode, basically to identify parts and inventory levels, and you know, where components were in the whole production process. So, you know, there's some interesting examples there. But let's first just go to the break, and then when we come back, we'll have a chat. Firstly, I think about the operational use cases for using QR codes.
Hi, this is Mick Jagger on
Classic Vinyl.
This is Debbie Harry from Blondie.
This is Jimmy Barnes here.
Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac.
This is Reverend Willie G from ZZ Top.
The best tracks from the greatest albums of our generation.
That's right.
From your breakfast and coffee to your drive home.
We've got the classic hits that make your workday
When you got a job to do.
Go by a lot faster.
Hey, if we haven't said it lately, thanks for listening. The home of classic rock.
Don't touch the dial.
PowerFMRadio.com.au.
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door, and will get your problem solved in no time with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Well, can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters, Toowoomba West, on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
Looking for exposure for your business or event? Take your business, community event, training seminar, sports fixture, function, concert or exhibition to the world with Power TV Australia and Power FM's unique live outside simulcasts. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation with stunning live pictures, interviews, graphics and live action replays for a fraction of the usual cost. From a festival or sports fixtures to a corporate or charity event, Power TV Australia and Power FM can take your message live to our local and national viewers and listeners. Invite the world to your party by contacting Barry today on 0431 390 920 or email programming@powertvaustralia.com for a quote.
Well, welcome back, Ray. So as we were saying before we went to the break, let's have a quick discussion about the operational or procedural use cases for QR codes, and then we'll get more into the marketing use case scenarios. So if you'd like to share some examples where you can see businesses getting some you know, let's say some productivity improvements or some process improvements by using QR codes. What have you observed in those situations?
Sure. So if you have a small office, home office kind of business, or even if you have a larger business, it's really helpful to be able to increase productivity gains by being able to label your equipment in your office with the appropriate things you need. So I'll give two examples of things that I've done that I find really useful for QR codes. One is that we have identified our equipment manufacturer support by creating little QR codes that direct people to those websites just by putting little QR code labels on them. And so what I've done is I've gone out to the office supply store and bought little square, I guess that's a square, little square stickers, and so we can run them through the LaserJet printer or the inkjet printer, doesn't really matter. And so we've been able to print QR codes onto these little stickers, and we just identify. So if we have an HP laptop, we want to be able to access the not only Microsoft Windows support, but also our own help desk if we need to. And so that QR code actually terminates at one of our own websites that gives a list of all of the various places people need to go in order to access that information. So when something happens, people know all they need to do is just open up their phone, open up the camera app, scan the QR code, and they're immediately taken to support, so they can get the process started for either repairing the device or maybe it's end user error. Typically, it's end user error, and so now they can be educated on how to fix the device and get going. Something else that we've done is we have applied the purchase order link for products that have consumables. So on the office refrigerator, for example, it has the links for the various things that we purchase, so that when the person uses the last of X or the second to last of X in the refrigerator, all they have to do is scan that QR code. It opens them up to the product page, and they can go ahead and purchase that with the company credit card to then replenish that particular item. Same thing with our ink cartridges and laser toner cartridges for the printers, so people can go ahead and quickly be taken to the printer cartridge website, automatically order it directly from the QR code. So there are lots of ways that you can use it in those ways, but also inventory management. If you run a retail store and you want to be able to track and manage an inventory, you can use them on all kinds of products that allow you to be able to manage inventory. And there are systems built for that purpose, bespoke for QR codes, so that you can actually handle and manage much larger amounts of inventory with the QR code. But I've seen people put QR codes for product information, nutritional information on their product packaging, so that you're able to further understand the products and be able to show to your customers very quickly that kind of stuff. And also to be able to in say meetings, be able to direct people to say if you're giving a presentation and you want to direct people to a survey question that you've automated, you can have QR codes on the printed material, and people can go ahead and scan that QR code and immediately be taken to the questionnaire so they can answer live. So you have a lot of different opportunities to be able to do this. Again, the point of a QR code is that it gives immediate result, right? Someone can pull out their phone and immediately be taken to the thing you want them to do in the present moment. It's not really useful for these kinds of things where people take something and go away for a while with it, like flyers, for example. You don't really use them for those purposes. They're really good for fixed asset, fixed location scanning.
Right. And you mentioned an interesting article when we were chatting before the video about using it to, I guess, just expedite usage of cryptocurrencies. Just explain to us there what you were referring to.
Right. So when Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies became fairly widely used, they were printing these little Bitcoin wallets. They were basic little paper wallets, and on one side was your public key as a QR code, and the other side was your private key as a QR code. And so you would be able to then walk up to a vendor who was taking and receiving your cryptocurrency and be able to scan the appropriate QR code for purposes of transacting your trade, whatever you were purchasing from the vendor. So QR codes are being used in a wide variety of different use cases, digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, and also in actually identifying tombstones. There was actually a huge market in Asiatic countries today where tombstones are being etched with QR codes so that people are capable of in the physical space.
Well, there you go. So QR codes have got a role in life and in death. Who would have thought?
There you go.
So
can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Ray, does that mean that eventually we'll all have a QR code on us, and when we die, instead of having to have someone go in and identify us, they'll simply read the QR code and say, yes, that's Barry Knights, he's dead?
Perhaps. I think the more likely thing is that we'll be embedded with a little chip, and the chip will have RFID, and it'll just be able to scan and identify us from wireless technology as opposed to optical scanning. I think the idea of tattooing people with QR codes, although there are people out there getting QR codes tattooed onto themselves, I think is a little bit more. People are a little bit more aversive to that than they are to having a little bit of technology implanted under their skin.
Okay, go back to the main.
Well, there you go. So on an operational and process basis, I think we've really covered a broad range of use cases. Let's have a chat now in our last 5 or so minutes about the use cases more in the sort of sales and marketing sense. If I'm a marketing guy, where am I going to be most likely to find success using QR codes?
Sure. So I would automatically go back to the example of having a live presentation where I wanted people to do something like take a survey. So take that into now a sales context where I'm giving a sales presentation, and instead of sending people to a survey, I wanted everybody to look at the same slide deck because perhaps we didn't have a projector in our conference room, or we're in a Starbucks or a cafe where there isn't a projector available. You can actually direct people to a downloadable PDF just by scanning some printed material that you have. They can open up a PDF document that is your sales material, and now you can be talking about that sales material while they're looking at their phone, or taking them to a video where, instead of them experiencing text, they now experience audio-visual for you to be able to walk them through the user experience for your product or service live in real time while they're looking at the video. All they had to do was scan, maybe you had a card or a piece of paper with the QR code printed on it. They just scan that QR code and it automatically pulls up that video for them to start looking at it. You can do that with blueprints. You can do that with flyers. Any number of things where you just have the QR code available to them in a sales meeting. So I think that there's a real use case in sales for being able to get a group of people to quickly open up their phone or tablet and immediately access the same sales material just from being able to scan the material. From a marketing perspective, I really do land on the side of having QR codes be in fixed locations. So the best example would be in a retail environment where someone, say, at their counter, their point of sale system right next to it, maybe you encourage people to like you on Facebook or follow you on Twitter or follow your LinkedIn company page. You can go ahead and do that by just placing a QR code in visible sight with the call to action right there on it. For many local businesses, you want to be engaging people in leaving reviews on Google, on Yelp, or wherever. You know, if you're a travel destination TripAdvisor, well, you could have a QR code that says, hey, did you have a great experience here at my resort, at my golf club, golf course, at my hotel? You know, scan this card and show visual imagery of a person doing the steps, because that's a big barrier to entry, people not knowing how this stuff works. But if you show, open up your camera app, you know, click the button and it'll take you there, then people will get a better idea about what needs to happen, and then be directed to leaving a review. And now you can engage and capture way more reviews than you otherwise would have been able to. I know some retail locations that I've worked with that have QR codes on the front of their store. So when they're closed, people can actually scan the QR code and it takes them to their website where they can buy their products, and then those products will be put on hold so they can come pick it up later. So they don't actually have to, you know, they can still shop at the store even when the store is still closed. So there's a huge sales opportunity there to be able to facilitate sales even when the store is closed. And so there's a lot of different case uses for QR codes, but again, they all fit into that space of being in a fixed location, you know, so that you can track the data based on those unique locations and the unique QR codes. I really, really recommend everybody to do two things with QR codes. One, track them, you know, track every single QR code, create a Microsoft Excel workbook or Google Sheets workbook, and capture each QR code that you're creating so that you're capable of seeing the statistics tracked for them. So you can use a URL shortener like Bitly or one of those other ones that gives you the data on that, and then you use that URL to create the QR code. And two is to always place the terminating location, place the link to which you're sending someone below the QR code. Because from a privacy and security perspective, if I don't know you and I don't yet know, like, or trust you, why should I scan your QR code when it could take me to something that's malicious, you know, in nature? So you need to be able to tell me, oh, what is the link and where is it sending to me, so that I can feel some level of comfort with knowing, oh, it's taking me to your website. And if for some reason the QR code doesn't work, I'm capable of then still typing it into my phone so that I would then be able to use it later.
Okay, well, that's a lot of information. It just makes me feel that, well, the only limitation to a commercial application or a marketing and sales application as a QR code is to the limit is one's imagination, because there are just so many things that I can see people using QR codes for, and you know, occasionally I do a little bit of, you know, DIY stuff on, you know, my car and my boat and the house, and I think of the, you know, the ship's chandlery and the automotive spares retail outlets and the hardware stores. You know, just about everything that I buy conceptually should have a QR code on it that will link me to a little how-to video to get the best use out of, you know, their particular product and safety features and technical features and advantages and everything. I mean, you could imagine almost everything that you could see in a retail outlet potentially has got a use case for a QR code.
Definitely, yeah. That's one of the really fun uses of QR codes, is, you know, directing people to how-to manuals. They open up your product or they come across your product, scan it, and a little video then displays covering, you know, the product in use, or how to set it up or whatever. Yeah, I think that's a really, really great use case.
Well, I hope we see a lot more use, a lot more businesses making use out of QR codes, because it's quite interesting for me. You know, occasionally I'm doing some sort of a task, and you know, a little while ago it was a sticky cistern. You know, when a toilet just keeps running and it's quite difficult to stop it. We had a built-in system inside the wall at home, and I remember we had no idea how to fix it, and eventually we just typed into a search engine what we could make out of the make and model of that particular unit, and we eventually found a YouTube video on how to actually fix the issue we had. But if there was just a QR code sticker on the system that we could have scanned and taken it straight to all the servicing information for that particular make and model, that would have been fantastic and saved us a lot of time. So endless opportunities for QR codes, I think, if business owners really think about their business and how they'd like to support their customer base.
Absolutely. Yep. Sky's the limit, and they just need to think with the customer's end in mind. You know, how will the customer interact with the product from a 360 life cycle perspective? You know, it's not just when they buy the product, it's when they're using the product and when the product starts to fail, because then you can potentially upsell or, you know, lead them to support and repair or customer service when the product does get to that part of the life cycle. And the better experience they have with you on that side of the product life cycle, the more likely they'll buy from you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. And so, Barry, I think we've covered as much as we should on QR codes, and let's hear from you. You've made some good use out of QR codes too. So, just in closing, maybe share with us how you're finding success with them.
Yeah, I use QR codes a lot for where I go to seminars and conferences. And if you link the QR code with a program, with a CRM like Zoho, you can actually capture people's details and put them straight into Zoho and have your CRM almost automatically set up for you. So I use them a lot for that kind of thing. I've also used them on this station where we've got individual retailers displaying their products, and we put a QR code down in the bottom right hand corner so that somebody who is watching it on a regular screen can get out their phone, and it takes them straight into that product in their online store, and they can purchase it right there while they're watching. So, and I was thinking about, as you guys were talking, I was thinking that we've got some other interesting possibilities here. If you have a breakdown in your car somewhere, generally it's a matter of frustration, and you've got to think, oh, what's the phone number of the AAA or the RACQ or RACV or whatever. If you just had a little QR code on your screen in your car, you could just get your phone out and dial the number straight away. So there are lots of, not just for business, but for regular users that can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, no, you could put the QR code in the jamb of the door so that it's not even, you know, breaking any aesthetics of the vehicle, and you can create the QR code so that it automatically launches the phone number, you know, the phone application on any phone, just by using the tel operator. So TEL : and then the phone number. So you would be able to have any phone, Android or iOS, automatically launch the phone number, and you just have to hit dial. You know, so you can really reduce the frustration of being in those situations by thinking ahead. What are the things that could potentially fail, and where would I like to be able to just scan a code and immediately be taken to help?
Yep. All right. Again, another really interesting discussion today. We'll leave it there. Do either of you have any parting comments? No?
Think creatively about your QR codes, but think them through. Think them through the entire life cycle of your product or service, and that I think will not only get the juices flowing, but, you know, make sure that you're creating effective ones that work. Make sure that they work. You have to test them, but then make sure that you're also tracking the data behind the scenes. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure and a really interesting show. This has been Barry for Switched on IT. We'll see you again next week.